Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am thrilled today to welcome Yasha Wells to Cubicle to CEO. She is a loyal subscriber and listener. And so I love getting to interview people who understand our case study format. And I thought Yasha would be a perfect person to really wrap up our series on revenue to returns. In other words, how different entrepreneurs are using the profits from their business to invest in other money multiplier vehicles so that their money goes to work for them and is growing outside of their main business. And when Yasha and I were actually chatting in our subscriber group chat, she brought up that she does private money lending for commercial real estate. And I thought this was such a fascinating investment vehicle. It's not something that I know very much about. So my curiosity was immediately piqued, and I can't wait to dive into this topic today. But Yasha, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm super excited to be here.
Super excited to have you. And for those of you who are meeting Yasha for the first time, she helps everyday people earn double digit returns backed by industrial real estate without the tenants or toilets. I think that was brilliant. By the way, when I read that, I was like, oh, that's so good. That's such a great way to sum it up. And also, she's the co founder, and she does this, I should say. She's the co founder and general partner at Blueprint Industrial Capital, which is a company she co founded with her husband. And that's how they help people do this. But today, we're really going to be focused more on Yasha's own investment journey and how she's utilizing the same vehicle in her own life to grow her personal wealth. So, Yasha, I think the best place to start, honestly, well, I guess before we dig into the specifics of, this money multiplier, as you know, we always like to ask our guests their cubicle to CEO story. I believe you told me you actually have been self-employed for most of your life. So I'm not sure how relevant that question is to you, but let's hear, how did you make the leap into full-time entrepreneurship?
Well, prior to me jumping into full time entrepreneurship, I was working at a bank and I literally had to quit because I had to do my internship for the last semester of college. And then my life plans actually just changed completely because I was supposed to go into the Navy as an officer. And I met my husband and, change of plans. And so with that, like, I didn't have a career path ahead of me because when I met my husband, he was like, well, I can't get to know you on a boat. So I was like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm here in Jax. So from there, I had to figure out what I was going to do. And then that really pushed me into finding real estate, really. And so ever since then, like it just took off in different facets, but it's a place that I'm so happy I ended up at.
That's amazing. I love that. Can't get to know you on a boat. I mean, hey, fair.
Yes.
And I'm so glad it all worked out, that you found really your passion in this area that you've thrived in. For commercial real estate, maybe let's kind of look at this from like a 10,000-foot view first. There's a lot of different sectors within commercial real estate, right? And you specifically chose one, like you said, that doesn't have tenants or toilets. Can you expand or explain what you mean by that?
Yes. And so, like, rewinding it even just 10 years ago, we used to focus on just residential real estate and, saw that there was a lot of a headache. We're giving away the farm in a sense with, closing costs and just things like that, where we're just having to cater to the end user or buyer. And so, we were like, well, let's kind of like shift our focus and put that towards an asset that we don't have to worry about tenants or toilets. And that's where that saying came from. Because yes, you do still get tenants in buildings like this, but they're a different type of tenant. There are now business owners who understand and know, that these are longer term leases and just all of the things surrounding commercial properties. So it just makes it a different game to play.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, the commercial properties that you typically invest in these days or manage, what have you, they are, to my understanding, warehouses and storage units, not like your typical, let's say, brick and mortar in downtown where like a commercial lease might happen for like a main street retail business, right? Am I understanding that? Or do you actually have commercial properties in that realm as well?
No, so you are 100% correct. And so just giving it a little bit more context too. So it's not necessarily like a storefront, but for a place where a business can house their business. For example, if they're a mechanic or if they're an HVAC contractor or plumber or some sort of trade that needs that type of space and zoning,
Yeah.
because here in Florida, a lot of businesses are not allowed to keep, company vehicles and trucks within the community because of just, HOA communities and regulations.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're renting these warehouses, kind of part storage, maybe part office, but really to house, like you said, their equipment. And then also storage units. On the storage unit side, is that also, are you only dealing with business clients, or are you also renting out storage units to everyday people who maybe just can't fit all of their stuff in their house?
Yes, so we're renting out to everyday people in that sense, but the great thing about storage units is that, there's no one actually moving into the space physically where we would have to do an eviction or anything like that. When that happens, we would just take your stuff and you
Mm,
just get it back.
yeah. 100%. And I mean, I understand from just like, exploring different types of businesses and investment vehicles. The hardest part of any type of business is always going to be people, right? It's people management. And so I understand the appeal of getting to kind of reduce the risk there a little bit. Let's talk about how you're actually utilizing this to grow your returns and put your money, put your capital to work for you. So, let's just start with like the profits that your main business makes. When you're investing this into, an investment vehicle to multiply your money, are you doing this through finding storage units and warehouses to purchase and kind of cash flowing through some of the tenants there, as well as doing private money lending? Or are you mostly focused on private money lending as a way to grow your own money?
So a little bit of both, but we have another added layer with what we do. And when we're looking at opportunities, so we love land, and that's kind of like, and I hate to say this like publicly in a sense because I'm like, man, everyone's gonna go jump for the land now. But land is such an underutilized vehicle that people aren't even thinking about. Like, man can't create anymore. And so when you can look at a piece of land and see potentially a developing area or up and coming area, and you maybe hold on to that or potentially go through some rezoning, there's just so many more opportunities that someone could have to, park their money in just multiple assets across real estate.
Let's actually start with that piece and we'll go through all three of them so our listeners can really get the full range of possibility in this arena. But let's start with the land piece because, it's funny. I haven't always actively thought about land. Like, yes, it's come up, in different conversations throughout the years. And there's some actually really cool things on the wealth management side that my advisor has told me about before with different like tax laws and things that you can do with land. But other than just kind of like a surface level curiosity, it's never been really a central focus of mine. However, in recent months, Yasha, it's been interesting. Maybe it's just the algorithm like feeding me more of this content as we're recording this series or whatever it might be. But I've been getting so much content around buying land. There's actually this one woman, and I'm forgetting her name right now, but her entire like investment thesis is every year her and her husband buy 100 acres of land. And it's really powerful. She said the same thing that, it's the one type of asset that people can't create more of. And so for you, when you're looking at land and buying land, can you walk us through maybe a recent deal that you did where you purchased land? Where did you find it? Why did you buy it? And what was your use case for this land?
Okay, yes. I was like, this is my favorite topic. So with land, we're literally looking for opportunities directly online already available. And that could be through the MLS, Zillow, LoopNet, places like that that already have properties listed. Now, going even deeper, we're looking at, okay, what's going to be the end goal with this piece of land? Is it going to be for, an industrial flex use space? Is it going to be for storage? Is it going to be for maybe an RV park? And so looking at the possibilities with that, that's helping us determine. Now, with our just unique capabilities, we look at residential lots, believe it or not. So we're not
Hmm.
even looking at the things that already are zoned for industrial or anything like that, because now you're going to be paying a higher price point when it's already zoned properly. Because one way that we're able to take advantage or create that instant equity and entitlements is by taking a residential lot and then rezoning it into the highest and best use case like industrial or industrial business park or light industrial. So kind of looking at it from that lens, but we most likely always convert things into light industrial business park or somewhere in that realm.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that that zoning made a difference in the price point. So, if you think back to your most recent land purchase, then did you end up finding it on Zillow, or where was it? What did you purchase it for? Even if you can't give specifics, even a ballpark range would be helpful just to help our listeners gather some context here. And then, was it a residential zone that you were planning to rezone?
Yes, we found this property one on LoopNet, and it's like on a main artery of Jacksonville. And with that property, we purchased it for 1.3 million, and it was residential. It's like the last 5 acres on a main road here, and there's like old houses from like the 1930s on there. And from the rezoning, we did the rezoning while we were under contract. And from there, before we even closed on that property, that value, the appraised value shot up to 2.5 million. So right
Wow.
out the gate before we've even closed, like we're already having and walking into a property with equity.
In the case of, land that you've bought before where you've just gone and improved the value and then immediately turned around and sold it, you're making that, like, let's say, 500,000 profit from the resale of the land itself. But in a case like this, where you're actually holding onto the land and you're not doing a cash out refinance, by the way, jot down that term if you don't know what that means, like, Google it or ask a real estate professional. Like, that's a really important term to learn. I didn't learn it until we had built our duplex a couple of years ago. But anyways, for this particular deal, Yasha, how do you plan to get, I guess, make that profit, that 500,000 or more profit in the end? Like, what are you planning to do with this property?
So we're going to play the long game with that particular property and, see through the development of it and then, cash out later. So you kind of have to have a few different options, whether if it's like, hey, cashing out at the, once the rezoning's done or seeing the development through or, just holding on to it for quite some time and then just collecting the cash flow from it. We are planning to develop and build 46 industrial flex use space there. And so that will be where they're tenant occupied, going back to those HVAC contractors and people that need to house their business in. That's what we're planning to do. And just collecting the cash flow and rent from that, and then potentially selling it off in 5+ years.
Amazing. I want to get into the private money lending because I know that's what we led with. And I think this is the vehicle that is really interesting to me. Can you explain, just act like I'm five, what is private money lending? Explain it to us like we know nothing.
Yes. Okay. So private money lending is where you're taking your cash, and that can come in the form of cash, money from like an IRA or 401k, things like that, even a health savings account. And you're investing that in another operator where they're providing you with a set return. And that can look so different from deal to deal. That could be just monthly payments, that could be quarterly payments, that could be no payments. And maybe you're participating in the upside profits at the very end. So it could just look like a wide array of things, but it's where you're putting your money to work without the tenants or toilets because you're not doing anything. You're letting someone else do the work and you're just essentially just collecting a check.
So you're kind of acting almost as the bank in this
Yes.
scenario, right? Okay. So walk us through one of your recent private money lending investments, I guess, that you've made. Like, maybe paint the picture for us of like what the scenario was, who came to you for this money, or how did you find out about this opportunity to deploy your money this way? Let's start with the background.
Yes. So typically, whenever I come into large chunks of money, I'm always like, okay, how can I basically put this out on the street? How can I deploy this with an operator that can provide returns? And depending on what your investment risk or level is, that's also something you have to like do a self check, right? Because
Yeah.
some people can, extend deals out for 5 to 7 years. Some can be short term, maybe 6 to 12 months. And so, me, I like to do mine a little bit faster. And so, with this opportunity, one of my girlfriends actually, she told me about someone that she lent her money to years prior. And I said, "Oh, well, this is great. I've actually met this person. I like to know who I'm working with personally, just for that comfort level and like their track record." And just reached out to her and asked her if she had any available opportunities where I could lend. And she did at the time. And she was doing a fix and flip in a local community. And so I was like, okay, great. This is awesome. Like, I want to lend my money to you. And it was only for 6 months. But with her strategy, she paid her, lenders monthly. So that was really good as well because I was like, oh, this is just like, collecting money from the bank and, just watching someone else do all the work when I'm typically, the person that's always doing the work. It was nice to
Yeah.
be very hands off and see, the transformation of the home without me doing it and then also collecting the money.
That's amazing. And just to like clarify, like in the previous example that we just shared where you and your husband bought a piece of land and then rezoned it and did all the things, you were the operator in that scenario, right? And so in
Yes.
this scenario, you're saying you found someone else like you, but they were doing a different type of real estate project, like you said, a fix and flip, and you were just lending them a certain amount of money. They were using that capital to help finance the renovation, and then they're paying you back monthly over that 6 month window.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. And then with this sort of short-term money lending, what type of returns can you typically expect for a short-term thing like this? Like in this particular deal, what was the percentage interest that she was paying you back on these monthly payments?
Yes. So with that particular one, I was getting a
To hear the rest of this episode and unlock weekly subscriber-only content and community access, join us as a premium subscriber at cubicletoceo.co/podcast. The link is below in our show notes.